At the beginning of the story, a girl is shown lying on the ground in a bloodied state. For some unknown reason, she has been tied up. Just then, someone dressed in black appears and brutally kills her with a hammer. The entire incident is being watched by someone outside through a small hole. The scene then changes to Elisa. Although she is now pregnant, she is not mentally prepared for the baby. On top of that, her job at a consulting office requires her to travel frequently. Because of this, Elisa's mother schedules an appointment with a doctor for her so she can have an abortion. To visit her mother, Elisa books a car, which is owned by Fabrizio. The next day, during the journey, there are a few other passengers in the car besides Elisa. Among them is a couple named Sofia and Mark, who are on their way to attend a wedding party. There is also a doctor named Riccardo. Fabrizio records videos of everyone, as he runs a YouTube channel called Friends with Fabrizio. As the journey begins, they engage in conversation. Sofia is playing a mobile game that involves answering questions related to various horror movies. After traveling some distance, Fabrizio offers beer to everyone. Meanwhile, Mark learns from a local newspaper about a piece of news stating that a mother and daughter have gone missing from this part of southern Italy. The police suspect that the mafia is behind these disappearances. The newspaper also includes some statements from the mayor regarding this matter. In reality, this part of southern Italy is infamous for its mafia activities. After drinking the beer, Elisa suddenly feels unwell midway and asks to stop the car so she can vomit near the jungle. At the same time, Riccardo makes a phone call. His expression suggests that he is dealing with some problem. Meanwhile, Mark insists on driving the car. Despite Fabrizio's repeated warnings, he gives in to Mark's stubbornness. Mark starts speeding the car recklessly. As time passes and evening falls, he turns on the headlights while driving through the jungle. Suddenly, he gets startled by a dead deer lying in the middle of the road and swerves the car, causing an accident. No one remembers how much time has passed after the accident. When Elisa regains consciousness in the morning, she sees everyone gathered around Mark, as his leg is broken. When they try to call for help, they realize that none of their phones have any network. Looking around carefully, they notice that they are now quite far from the main road. There is nothing around except an abandoned area and a dense jungle. While walking deeper inside to look for help, they come across a strange triangular-shaped house in the middle of an open field. When they go closer to check, they don't see anyone. Sofia tries to peek inside through the window, but she doesn't spot anyone. Meanwhile, Riccardo attempts to start the car again, but it refuses to start. Mark is in disbelief that they are stuck in the jungle. The whole situation feels like something out of a horror movie. Seeing Mark's reaction, Riccardo gets extremely annoyed. He then sets out with Fabrizio to search for a road. Meanwhile, inside the car, Sofia passes the time chatting with Elisa. Through their conversation, it is revealed that Sofia works in jewelry design. While walking through the jungle, Fabrizio and the others suddenly stop. They see three gigantic scarecrow-like figures hanging in front of them. These figures are draped in red cloth, and in front of them lie severed pig heads. Seeing this, their bodies shudder in fear. It seems as if some horrific black magic has been performed, or is about to be performed, there. Fabrizio immediately says that they should leave the place without wasting another moment. The blood smeared on the scarecrows' heads looks fresh, indicating that it was done recently. Without hesitation, they leave the place. On the other hand, Elisa notices that the door of the house is open, which means someone must have been here recently. Without informing anyone, she enters the house alone and finds bizarre pictures hanging on the walls. Just then, she hears the sound of a door closing nearby. When she enters the room, she sees multiple candles burning, and on the walls, there are three strange demon-like figures depicted. Among them, one figure has no eyes, the second has no ears, and the third has no mouth. They are shown sitting on a winged horse. Their names are Ostro, Mastoso, and Carganoso. It is said that in ancient times, when people were dying due to famine, these three brothers arrived on Earth. They claimed they had come to save humanity from starvation, but under one condition. Someone had to be sacrificed to them. The villagers then sacrificed a girl as an offering to these beings. According to the ritual, they first cut off her tongue and then her eyes. However, even after this, the villagers could not escape. To stay alive, they had to continue worshipping the three brothers, which meant the tradition of human sacrifice had to continue. Fabrizio narrates this ancient myth to the group, but no one takes him seriously and simply laughs it off. By the time the afternoon turns to evening, they decide to spend the night there and leave in the morning. Since Mark is unable to walk, he has to stay put, and they will set up a medical arrangement for him before taking him along. Mark starts feeling guilty, thinking that the whole situation is his fault. As things start to get tense, Fabrizio jokes, "It feels like we're stuck in the middle of a classic horror movie." Hearing this, everyone starts laughing. As time passes, night falls. Fabrizio goes to a secluded part of the jungle to relieve himself. Suddenly, he sees two masked figures standing just across from him. Seeing them, Fabrizio is so frightened that he is unable to urinate. Terrified, he runs back toward the van. Meanwhile, Elisa continuously keeps messaging her mother, hoping that if she ever gets a network signal, at least some of the messages will be sent. Just then, they hear a scream coming from inside the house. Everyone immediately turns their attention toward it. A few moments later, the screaming stops. Filled with fear and anxiety, Sofia and Elisa go inside the house to check. At that moment, Fabrizio rushes in and says, "We need to escape right now. I just saw something horrifying." Without wasting time, Ricardo runs inside to get the two women. Upstairs, they see a little girl tied up with ropes in a pile of hay, surrounded by black magic artifacts. They are completely shocked. Then, they notice a glass jar lying nearby. Inside, they see a freshly severed tongue floating in liquid. Realizing that the girl's tongue has been cut out, they shudder in horror. Before they can think of what to do next, suddenly, sirens start blaring outside. A red glow floods the surroundings. They look out and see two strange-looking individuals pulling Mark out of the van and dragging him toward the house. It becomes clear to them that these people are cult members. As Mark is brought into the house, three humanoid demon-like figures enter the room. Sofia is about to scream in fear, but Ricardo quickly covers her mouth. Because the people downstairs are unaware that they are hiding on the upper floor. Then, what happens next leaves them completely speechless. The masked individuals tie up Mark and, before he can react, they break both of his legs with a hammer. Then, a metal instrument was inserted into the eyes, pulling them out. Witnessing this horrific scene, they trembled in fear. Ricardo somehow managed to keep Sofia quiet. When Mark died in excruciating pain, his body was dragged outside. After this incident, Sofia went into complete shock. They decided that as soon as morning arrived, they would escape from there as quickly as possible. At dawn, they rescued the little girl, and Ricardo entrusted Elisa with full responsibility for her. They somehow managed to escape with her into the jungle, where they found a place filled with broken-down cars. This meant that many tourists had mistakenly arrived here before and never made it back. At that moment, an argument broke out between Ricardo and Sofia. Ricardo blamed Mark for everything that had happened. But Sofia yelled, "What kind of doctor are you, traveling on public transport?" Normally, doctors, especially when covering such long distances, either use their own car or take a flight. Are you even a real doctor? Sofia also said that they should have taken action the day before when things first started going wrong. Ricardo responded, "My job is to heal people, not to rescue them." But then Elisa interrupted them, saying, "No one here is at fault. Everything that happened was purely coincidental." Later, while sitting in the car, Elisa tried talking to the little girl. The girl showed her a picture of her family. Seeing this, Elisa asked, "Is there any way out of this jungle?" The girl then wrote something in her diary, and Elisa was shocked after reading it. According to the child, this wasn't a jungle at all. Before they could process this information, a siren suddenly blared. They tried to escape, but no matter which way they ran, they always ended up in the same place. They couldn't understand what was happening. Frustrated, Ricardo grabbed Fabrizio by the collar in anger. But Fabrizio insisted that they had been heading south. Even he didn't know how they had ended up back in the same spot. To Ricardo, everything felt like a nightmare. He felt as if all hope was lost. Elisa, however, suggested that they return to the cabin for the time being. They planned that if the cult members came at night, they would burn the house down along with them. Fabrizio gave everyone some beer to drink and then sat quietly, saying that he would stay on watch for the night. As they sat together, they each began sharing personal stories. For the first time, Ricardo admitted that he was once a doctor, but due to his negligence, a patient had died, and his medical license was revoked. After that, he suffered from severe mental distress, which led to frequent fights with his wife, who eventually divorced him and left. Then, Fabrizio spoke up, saying that since he was from southern Italy, people from the north often called him a mafia member. They never understood that not all people from the south were criminals. One day, after getting into an argument over this, Fabrizio said he killed those people. Hearing this, everyone burst into laughter, as they couldn't imagine someone as timid and goofy as Fabrizio killing anyone. As they kept talking, night fell, and one by one, they all dozed off due to exhaustion, except for Fabrizio, who remained on guard. During a private conversation, Elisa revealed to Sofia that she was pregnant. Hearing this, Sofia smiled and said, "We already suspected that. Here, take my ring as a small gift for your baby." Sometimes, strangers become closer than our own family. None of them noticed when they eventually fell asleep. Suddenly, they were awakened by the sound of a siren. Elisa realized that no one else was around. When she stepped outside, she saw several masked figures standing in the jungle, surrounding a large scarecrow. Sofia and Ricardo were tied up nearby. Seeing this terrifying sight, Elisa gasped in horror. But before she could react, Fabrizio grabbed her from behind, covering her mouth, and pulled her inside. He kept watch through the door, observing the entire scene. The child was also tied up. The cult members pulled out a glass container, revealing a severed tongue inside. They started making eerie noises. Then, two demonic figures cut out Sofia and Ricardo's tongues and eyes, attaching them to the scarecrow. Immediately, everyone present started ringing the bells hanging from their necks. Finally, Sofia and Ricardo's throats were slit, killing them. Witnessing this, Elisa was deeply traumatized. Fabrizio tried to calm her down. Then, Elisa's eyes landed on the beer bottles nearby. A sudden realization struck her. Although they had all been asleep when the siren blared, Fabrizio had stayed awake. So why hadn't he woken them up? More importantly, every time Fabrizio had offered beer to the others, he never drank any himself. At that moment, Elisa confronted Fabrizio, demanding, "What is going on here? Who are these people?" Fabrizio replied, "I don't know anything. We're the only ones left alive." As he embraced her, Elisa heard a woman's voice whispering into Fabrizio's ear, "Take Elisa to the deer." Immediately, Elisa yanked the earphone from Fabrizio's ear and realized everything. This had all been part of his plan from the very beginning. Fabrizio had been drugging them with sleeping pills mixed into the beer. Elisa turned to the mysterious woman and asked, "Who are you? What do you people want?" When Fabrizio asked for his earphone back and Elisa refused, he became furious. He yelled at her, cursing, "You ruined everything." Then, he approached the mounted deer head on the wall and said, "Take Elisa away." As soon as he finished speaking, two cult members entered and dragged Elisa away with them. When she regained consciousness, she found herself tied to a chair at a dining table, her hands pierced with nails. Several people were seated at the table, and at the far end sat the mayor, the same man whose picture she had seen in the newspaper. The mayor looked at her and said, "You're very beautiful. It's almost a shame to kill you. But if I don't, how will I take care of the people of this town?" Elisa began to weep upon hearing this, but the people around her mocked her by imitating her crying. It was as if every ounce of human emotion had been drained from them. The mayor then silenced them and instructed them to enjoy their lunch before walking away. Shortly after, a man came and escorted Elisa to a room. Inside, a large TV screen displayed multiple CCTV feeds from different locations. This was the control room. They had been monitoring Elisa and the others from the very start. Just then, Fabrizio appeared on the screen. Elisa immediately asked about the little girl. But Fabrizio smirked and said, "I don't want to give you any spoilers. Just wait a little longer." Furious, Elisa screamed, "Do you enjoy torturing people and capturing their suffering on video?" Fabrizio laughed and replied, "Oh, come on. This is a horror movie. This is how it's supposed to be." Hearing this, Elisa let out a loud, mocking laugh. She scoffed, "So, in the end, I'm just going to die in a coward's movie, one that features 3 clowns named Ostro, Mastoso, and Carganoso?" Hearing this, Fabrizio became slightly irritated and snapped, "How much do you really know about history?" In the city of Avio in the year 1412, 3 brothers founded a mafia gang named Guard Ugla. Their power was so vast that they were capable of overthrowing the Spanish political party. And I will turn these 3 into classic horror movie characters in my cinematic world, similar to Freddy, Jason, and Leatherface. Notably, these 3 are infamous psycho killer characters in the horror movie industry. Hearing this, Fabrizio got angry and said, "If I were in the USA right now, I would have received the recognition I deserve as a movie creator." Elisa then replied, "A person like you will never get anything because everything you want to create is just a carbon copy. There's nothing original in them." What Fabrizio said next was a brutal reality check for all of us, including Elisa. Fabrizio asked, "What do you like to see in movies? A guy killing his flatmate? A mother strangling her own son? A husband murdering his wife? Ultimately, you all just want to see someone die. To you, that's entertainment. And these things trigger dopamine release in your brains, making you crave such content repeatedly. That's why these types of movies and series are always hits. In reality, none of you even try to understand the true philosophy behind a story. Instead, you prefer watching movies mindlessly, just for entertainment. That's why psychology-based or life-centric stories don't get many views. So, if this is what the audience wants to see, shouldn't I make exactly that? For this reason, when I planned this movie, I trapped you all in my illusion from the very beginning. Every moment will not be fake but will feature real deaths. And that's how my movie will be a hit. As soon as he finished speaking, Fabrizio went offline. His words pierced Elisa's mind like an arrow. But at that moment, she realized that if she wanted to survive, she had to escape from there no matter what. With great effort, she pulled out the nails embedded in her hands. When she got out, she saw that the entire place was just a movie set. Nearby, the dress of that little girl was hanging. Entering a cabin, Elisa saw the masks of those 3 demon-like men hanging, with a camera placed in front of them. Seeing all this, her rage boiled over. The girl for whom she had risked her life, it was all a lie. Then, Fabrizio was seen discussing the next shot with the little girl. It turned out that her tongue had never been cut off, she was perfectly fine. Fabrizio said that the rest of the team was waiting for them at that house. There, they would kill Elisa and complete the rest of the movie. But in the meantime, Elisa had already witnessed everything while hiding. As soon as the little girl came outside wearing her frock to continue shooting, she saw Elisa standing there wearing the demon's mask, holding a gun. Without a second thought, Elisa fired. The girl's body was flung aside. Seeing this, Fabrizio rushed out, but Elisa shot him in the leg. She then mounted the camera on a tripod, started recording, and shot Fabrizio in the face, blowing his head off. After that, Elisa calmly turned off the camera, picked up the gun, and headed into the jungle. Just then, she heard a noise. Raising her gun, she saw a shirtless child standing there. As soon as the child saw Elisa, he jumped over a broken fence and ran away. When Elisa reached the spot, she found a sign that read, "Military Area." Crossing the fence and walking a little further, she saw the ocean in front of her, where people were partying as if nothing had happened. Checking her phone, she saw that all her messages had been sent to her mother, meaning there was a network signal there. But Elisa was exhausted. She hadn't eaten for days and was completely drained. Deep wounds covered her body, and blood was dripping from them. Yet, no one there stepped forward to help her. Instead, they all took out their phones and started recording videos. Some even went live on Instagram and Facebook. Without saying a word, she stepped into the ocean, washing off her blood while clutching her belly, because Elisa was going to bring her child into the world. She would not opt for an abortion. Instead, she would raise her child to be a true human being. And with that, the movie ended. But there was a post-credit scene. In a social media group, people were discussing Fabrizio's movie, a classic horror story. Some commented that the movie was bad, while others said that the death scenes should have been more terrifying. Some argued that including explicit scenes between Sophia and Mark would have been more fitting. Others felt that Elisa should have died. In other words, all they cared about was entertainment. Meanwhile, an unknown person, observing this gossip, opened the Tor browser on his PC. The Tor browser is typically used for accessing the dark web or deep web, where unimaginable illegal activities take place. Using the Tor browser, the person accessed an OTT platform called Bloodflix, but didn't watch the entire movie. Instead, he only watched the scene where Elisa killed Fabrizio and then gave it a dislike. Through this, the director conveyed a message: some viewers exist who don't even watch or understand a movie fully but still dislike it. They don't watch such movies because they genuinely enjoy them, but simply because they see others watching them. They never consider how much time, money, and creativity the filmmakers have invested in their work. Of course, not every movie will appeal to everyone. But judging a movie without watching it in its entirety is never fair. To those who watched this video until now, judge for yourself whether it was good or bad. And if you liked it, don't forget to hit the like button. If you're new to this channel and want more terrifying horror movies, subscribe now.